Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of In Lay Terms. I am your host, Payman Askari, and today we are joined by none other than Mr. Shawn Buckley. Mr. Buckley, welcome back.
Glad to be here, Payman. Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for coming back, and I'm really honored that you reached out to me and considered coming back on my show. You have some interesting news, some interesting developments coming out of the NHPPA that you want to share with us today, right?
Yeah, no, I do. And just some of your viewers might not even know like NHPPA because what the heck is that? And that stands for the Natural Health Product Protection Association. And it's a nonprofit that I helped found back in 2008. And its sole objects are to protect our access to natural health products. So the types of things you'd find in health food stores, the types of things if you went to like a naturopathic doctor or homeopath that they would use to treat you. That's what I'm talking about when we're talking about natural health products. So it's everything from professional, lines to, your vitamin C, your vitamin D, which are highly regulated, and Health Canada is doing its best to take them away. And so we kind of stand in the gap and educate people and the like. But we've got a big event happening. And so just to kind of give you the background is when we formed in 2008, that our first big fight was actually against the Harper government. So they had introduced a bill that was going to really create problems for, those providing natural remedies to us. And we organized and fought it, and other groups organized and fought it. And we were successful by and large, is we held it off until 2023. That the federal government kind of snuck it into the federal budget bill, and nobody even knew it was happening. And all of a sudden, what Canadians have fought against for, about 15 years became law, or 18 years. So, so here we are back in this fight. But back in 2008, we realized we were in this war of attrition. So what Health Canada does is they'll come up with an initiative to restrict our access, to make it more difficult, and everyone will organize to try and resist it. And we're just happy if we don't lose too much. And now that's a war of attrition you can't win. Like the writing's on the wall. If you look at Health Canada's actions, I've been doing this for 30 years. They're consistent. They're, you know where the train's going, and the train's going with us being locked in a pharmaceutical model. I mean, for appearances, they'll have lipstick on the pig, and we'll have, some vitamins and minerals, but in such low doses and with such ridiculous labels that by and large, what we experience now for helping ourselves will be gone. So we know where they want us. They want us in this locked into a pharmaceutical model, chemical drug model, where we don't have the realistic opportunity, most of us, of treating ourselves with natural remedies. So how do you win a war of attrition? Well, you can't. Unless you come up with your own battle plan, you can't. And so we actually brought people from across Canada, retailers, manufacturers, practitioners, people that rely on them. And we just asked the question, how do we solve this? We know where Health Canada wants to go. We don't want to go there. How do we solve this? And the idea was, well, why don't we create, a health bill of rights? So out of that, the Charter of Health Freedom was drafted. And it, it was drafted in 2008, Payman, but every time I read it, I love it more. And, it's funny because the Canadian Health Food Association, they know that we're pushing this charter. They're another trade association. And so they had their Gowling's lawyer look at it. And I had a Zoom call with the Gowling's lawyer. And she said the same thing. She says, every time I read it, I like it more, right? So what it does is it takes the health rights that the courts already say we have, and it codifies them as basically the top law in Canada. So it's above all other federal laws. So it acts like a Bill of Rights. It says this takes precedence over all other federal laws. And it spells it out very clearly. Canadians have this health right. Canadians have this health right. Canadians have this health right. So there's no ambiguity. You're not in court having your lawyer go through 100 cases saying, no, we really do have this health right, Judge. It gives it crystal clear clarity. Now, it's curious, payment is one of the health rights entrenched in the Charter of Health Freedom, although written in 2008, has much more meaning today, and that's the right to refuse treatments. But the courts have always said we do have that right, and wouldn't it have been nice to have that codified and clear and set out that takes precedence over all other federal law? Wouldn't that have been nice if we had that a few years ago? So another thing the Health Charter does is it creates some legal presumptions, and these are new. And one really important one is it creates the legal presumption that the best source of information about whether a treatment works or does not work for an individual is, surprise, surprise, the individual. And this is super important because what happens in the real world is, let's say your life depends on a natural product. Well, what's happened is you started taking all of the chemical drug treatments that the mainstream system has to offer. They didn't work for you, or even worse, they made you worse with the side effects. And then you found a natural remedy and you're well and you're only alive because of it. And then Health Canada's taking it away. I mean, we have examples where this has happened. Health Canada takes that away. Well, if you go to court then, so if you're one of the very few Canadians that would actually have the money to go to court, your life's on the line. Most of us don't have the resources to go to court. But if you're one of this, small sliver of Canadians that you would actually have the money to take on the Department of Justice, that's a bit of an Orwellian term, but we'll go on. So you've got enough money to take on the Department of Justice. And you're asking a court to say, listen, I've got to have access to this product because I've got this condition and my life depends on it. What happens in the real world is the Department of Justice, with unlimited resources, will hire 3 or 4 experts to file expert affidavits and evidence saying, no, you're wrong. There are these approved treatments. They're absolutely fantastic. Here's how well they work. And you can completely manage your condition on these. Now, you've already gone through them and they were a death sentence for you. But you now have to, if you have the resources and you don't die before the court, you get to actually argue it. You've got to now convince a court that all these high dollar experts that Health Canada has brought in are actually incorrect when they're citing all this research and basically saying you're full of crap. And some people can't get over that burden. And then the beauty is when you fail, you have to pay the costs that these experts, so you'll be paying hundreds and thousands of dollars in costs because that's what these experts charge the Department of Justice to convince, tell a court that you're wrong, that your life doesn't depend on a treatment. And that's just nonsense payment. Like that doesn't serve Canadians at all. So that's why that's in the Charter of Health Freedom. And then we absolutely know that Health Canada views the pharmaceutical companies as their clients and is there to protect their interest. And one of the reasons I know this personally is I have defended over the years more companies charged by Health Canada than all other lawyers in Canada combined. Now, that sounds super impressive, but they really don't lay charges often. And there was, about a decade where I had every one in Canada. So, and in criminal cases, they have to give us disclosure. So they have to give us their internal emails and the like. You got to fight for it because they don't want to just follow the law and give you what you're entitled to. But when we get their internal emails, we see that they refer to the pharmaceutical companies as their clients. And of course, the pharmaceutical companies are their clients because the pharmaceutical companies are paying their wages. And how this works is the Mulroney government in the early 80s brought in, in all of our regulatory environment, what's called cost recovery. And it sounds good, but it's not good for the citizen. So how it works is the idea is listen, we're regulating businesses that are making money. We're regulating them to protect Canadians, but they're making money and they should be bearing the burden for this, not the taxpayer. So let's charge them fees for service. But the problem is in the case of Health Canada, they've just structured their fees so that basically the industry is paying their wages. So most of Health Canada's budget comes from the pharmaceutical companies. Well, Health Canada knows if it stops approving drug applications by the pharmaceutical companies, that then their budget will shrink and they'll have to start firing people. And the government's not going to give them more
Shawn,
money. There's a
a,
conflict of interest here.
a quick question popped into my mind. Is this happen anywhere else across the government? Like Ministry of Immigration, do they charge a fee to the immigrants and they're beholden to the immigrants, kind of thing?
I don't know about immigration, but like in transportation, there's some of it. I think it's most pronounced in the regulation of drugs. And some interesting things flow from this. Like there was I had the honor of getting to know a gentleman named Dr. Shiv Chopra. He's deceased now, but he was a drug approval scientist for Health Canada. So a pharmaceutical company will submit a drug application to Health Canada, and Health Canada has people that with expertise in, going through the process, based on what's submitted, and they can ask for more clarifications and more information to determine, well, is this drug safe? Is it effective? Does it really work for what they want a license for? And if it's relatively safe and it's relatively effective, then asking the final question, should we do this? Like, do the benefits outweigh the risks? Should we approve this drug? Is it in the interest of Canadians? So we've got these people within Health Canada, and he was one of them. He was there for, I think, 30 years. For a while, he actually ran the veterinary drug approval process, but he was primarily on the human end. Well, he became a whistleblower when the companies were trying to get growth hormones into our dairy supply. And he forced the Senate to call him and 4 other drug approval scientists to testify about the drug approval process in Canada and, whether basically it's being subverted by management. And he wrote a book called Corrupt to the Core. And Payment, I mean, it would make a great movie. Like literally before scientists are to testify, Health Canada is frantically shredding documents. Like, I mean, it's such a frantic effort. Everyone sees what's happening within Health Canada. Like the management is shredding documents because they're afraid that the Senate is going to be demanding records. Like, and like this isn't being made up, right? So, but my favorite, and I want to share it with you, is he records in the book a CBC interview that Dr. Margaret Hayden gave to the CBC after she was forced to testify. And she explains to the CBC that, well, after you've been a drug approval scientist at Health Canada for, long enough, you come to understand how the management above you is going to get around your recommendation not to approve a drug. So let's just unpack this. So here we have a Health Canada scientist whose job it is to protect the public by ensuring that we're not approving drugs that we shouldn't approve. And so their own internal experts say, no, don't approve one of these drugs. Now, the management invariably, as is explained in the book, they're not doctors or scientists. So they don't have the expertise themselves. And there's a mechanism that they use to get around the Health Canada scientists who are saying, don't approve this drug. And it's brilliant. Payment. It's brilliant because nobody is liable criminally or civilly for what happens next. So what happens next is, and I say it's brilliant from a lawyer perspective, it's not brilliant for the Canadian public. So the management will appoint a team of outside experts to decide whether or not the drug should be approved. So now you have a team of people who make a decision, but you don't know who voted yes, who voted no. It's just this team overall recommends that the drug be approved. And usually they're connected to the pharmaceutical industry, but who isn't in the drug approval world if you want funding? If you know what I mean? So this team of outside experts will recommend that the drug's approved. Well, who's liable there? There's a team. You don't even know who votes yes, who votes no. And then the senior management just relies on the recommendation of this team of experts. Well, there's no liability there. I'm not an expert. I'm relying on the recommendation of this team of experts. And that's how the Health Canada management, without any liability to themselves or anyone else, gets around the recommendations of Health Canada scientists not to approve a drug. I hope everyone listening to this is feeling confident that when Health Canada approves a drug, you know it's safe and effective. I'm sorry I couldn't say that without smiling, but I
I
tried.
was reading your Charter of Health Freedom. I love how you slipped it in there. You said you want to create a Ministry of Wellness to basically point out that the Ministry of Health is not about health.
Yeah, well, yeah. So another thing the charter does is there's no trust that Health Canada will do anything but protect the pharmaceutical industry. So, I mean, even our drug approval laws. So payment, I don't like from a legal philosophical perspective, this is offensive, but basically Health Canada has been appointed as the sole arbiter to decide what treatments we're allowed to take. So we're in this drug model where anything we want to take for a therapeutic purpose, so anything to prevent us from getting sick, where that's the intended purpose, or anything to address sickness or injury, is a drug. Like if you're going to ingest it or put it on you topically. So we define drug so broadly, it includes anything used for a therapeutic purpose. So even water, if I was to suggest to you, you look dehydrated, we take some water. I've made water a drug, and thank goodness we're not in the same room and I'm giving you the water. I would be violating federal law after federal law after federal law by giving you water to treat or prevent dehydration. Like, I mean, that's how silly this is. So everything is a drug. And then all drugs are illegal because we have in our regulations that you can't sell a drug without Health Canada pre-approval. So everything is a drug. All drugs are illegal, but Health Canada grants temporary exemptions from this blanket every drug's illegal in the form of a license. So we find ourselves in this world where Health Canada is the sole body to decide what we are allowed to use to prevent illness or treat illness. And the question begging to be asked is, how is it possible that we've actually appointed Health Canada as our health god that gets to decide what treatment we can take or can't take? They're in no way qualified for this. And even if they were, it's absolutely absurd that you would give the bureaucracy this power of life and death over us, because the treatments that we can access is the power of life and death. Like there's no question about it. I'll share a little later some of the stories that I'm hearing in real time right now as we prepare for this charter tour. So Health Canada gets to decide what treatments we can take. And then for anything used in the mainstream medical system, so for basically treating any condition, so cancer, heart disease, mental illness, arthritis, you name it, if it's going to be approved to treat a specific condition, then you have to go through this specific approval process found in our drug regulations. And that process on average costs about $1 billion. Now, you can do it for several hundred million on a simple application. But the point is it costs so much that in our lifetime, Payman, and the lifetime of anyone watching this, the only drugs that have gotten through this process, with the exception of one that was sponsored by government, had a patent. And this is deliberate. So we've structured our drug laws so that the only legal treatments, because remember, every treatment's illegal unless Canada approves it. We've structured our drug laws so that every legal treatment for a condition is a chemical drug. And that is why in our government-funded healthcare, if you access it, there's the odd exception where there's, the odd natural remedy allowed for some conditions. But by and large, the only treatments you're going to be offered are chemical drugs that had a patent when they were approved. Now, you don't get good health outcomes by structuring your healthcare system so that the only treatments are patented chemicals. One might think, Payman, that this system is actually meant to protect intellectual property rights, to protect patents. Because
That's
how did we
actually
end up in a healthcare system where the only legal treatments are chemical drugs, and they're the only treatments we're offered? Some of us can't afford alternative healthcare. And Health Canada viciously attacks anyone who tries to use natural remedies as actual treatments. The minute you say they're a treatment, they're after you. I mean, I have half of my legal career has been spent fighting Health Canada. So for 30 years, half of my legal practice, and most of it's out of court where they're just demanding that people shut down or stop this or that. Almost every single file involves people telling the truth, offering something as a treatment and sharing that it's a treatment. So we've got this full censorship so that we can protect these intellectual property rights. Because if you, and the reality is the mainstream medical system, listen, if I get in a car accident, I want to go to emergency and put back together. Full stop. One of my children was born almost 2 months premature and spent a month in a neonatal intensive care unit. Well, I want that. But for chronic illness, they suck. And we're in a model where Health Canada controls and allows into our food supply chemicals that make us sick. Our food no longer gives us the basic vitamins and minerals that we need. And for anyone who wants to research it, I mean, it's no secret. If you are chronically malnourished, which we are if we eat the way Health Canada tells us to, then there's a whole list of chronic diseases we develop, and we're forced into then a medical system that doesn't address the problem. It doesn't ask, well, what's causing this? Let's fix it. It basically gives you a chemical drug to treat the symptoms. And then so we're chronically sick, and the chemical drugs create their own problems. And it's just this money-making machine that causes death and suffering. And enough's enough, Payman. Right? And enough's enough. So we have to stop this censorship. So what the NHPPA is doing, so we told you about this Charter of Health Freedom. And, the NHPPA has always been a small group. Like, there were years at a time where, like, we had zero funding. And so, like, a small group of us were volunteers that hardly did anything, right? Like, and, but notwithstanding that, so we write this Charter of Health Freedom, and we start a paper petition, because back then, if you wanted a official petition for Parliament, there were no electronic petitions back then. You could only have a paper. So we start this paper petition. And over the years, like, just kind of grassroots, people have been collecting signatures. Well, we now have 150,000 actual paper signatures on this petition, which makes this the third largest petition in Canadian history. So, enough's enough. It's time to enter these into Parliament. So we decide, well, we better this fall, when Parliament resumes, enter these petitions. I mean, this is significant. And then we thought, well, we should make an event out of this. Why don't we drive the petitions? Let's drive the charter across Canada, have some stops along the way and some live events along the way. And then, so we'll start on the West Coast and we'll have a group on the East Coast and we'll have a group in Quebec. And let's meet in Ottawa. So we're going to meet in Ottawa on October 25th. We're going to start in Victoria on October 4th. And we're going to drive the charter across Canada and go to the NHPPA site. The calendar's in a bit of a flux now, but it'll probably be settled in the next week or so. And where we're having live stops. And if you're in the area, come and Payman, please come to this. Yeah, so this is our postcard. Payman, please come to Ottawa for the 25th. It'd be great. We're going to present the charter and the petitions to an MP that's agreed to enter them into Parliament. So,
Shawn, just a quick question. Are those my only two options, Victoria and Ottawa? Because both of those suck.
Oh, no, so I think you're in Vancouver area. I think October 6th, we're in Vancouver. There's going to be stops all along the way from the West Coast and along the way from the East Coast and along the way. Well, the Quebec one, I think, is, Quebec City and Montreal. And the East Coast, it's Charlottetown, and I forget the next stop. But yeah, so you can find those stops. And actually, if we're not going to be, doing an official stop, but we're on the way in your health food store or something, we're probably more than willing to stop in and do a little video and the like. And we're going to be inviting people to create their own videos and send them to us. We decided, Payman, well, let's actually have a health show while we're driving this across. So every day we want to be reporting in what's happening and we want to live stream the live events, but why don't we broadcast all day so that, people can participate whenever they're free to participate? Let's have an online health show. So, if you want to be a speaker, if you have a health story, like a natural product or some non-mainstream treatment has totally turned your life around, apply to be a witness. And if you're a health practitioner, apply to be a witness. And if you're a health food store, apply to be a witness. And if you're a health expert, apply to be a witness. And we're starting to interview these people, Payman. Now, I already knew this is life and death. I mean, I got into this because I came to understand this was life and death. I started acting for Health Canada as a lawyer against a herbalist named Jim Strauss. And then later I became lawyer for the same herbalist in another matter. And I came to understand that people's lives depend on this. And I've had file after file where Health Canada, really put people in danger. And, one file where the court even found that Health Canada restricting access caused deaths. And anyone reading that court transcript and looking at the exhibits will go, oh yeah, it's so clear. They caused deaths by restricting access to a natural product. So I knew this was life and death, but we're pre-recording a lot of these stories because we're going to be on the road. We can't be, interviewing people while we're on the road. I'm getting impacted personally and shocked by some of the stories. If I can, well, yeah, Sheila Lewis is an example on I see somebody popped up a comment. It's as shocking. If I can just share one that struck me is I'm interviewing a lady who, at the time of this story, she's working for Health Canada in Ottawa. And, the irony here isn't lost on her and it's not lost on me. And, and she was excited to share her story. So she's working for Health Canada in Ottawa. She's fairly high up in their biologics department. She's a PhD immunologist. And she has chronic fatigue syndrome so significantly that all she can do is work. She cannot sleep at night at all. She can nap during the day. So she's having to nap while she's at Health Canada to get through her day. And she shares with us, she had no other outside life. And she actually got fed up once and said, I'm going to go out for supper with a friend. That's it. I'm tired of having no outside life. So she took the day off work so that she could nap as much as she was able during that day so that she'd be able to go out for supper. And notwithstanding, that she did everything she could, Payman, while she's in the restaurant having supper with a friend, she passes out and face plants into her food. And that ended anything other than work. And even for work, she explained, I wasn't safe to drive home at the end of the day, because if I just, left work and it was 30-minute drive home, I would pass out. So she would nap at Health Canada for at least 20 minutes so that she would feel safe enough to drive home. Like, this is being totally disabled. And she said that, like, she was quite clear. If I didn't find a solution, I would have killed myself by now. Like no question. For her, this is life and death. And she's seen, she saw Canada's top specialist in chronic fatigue syndrome, the medical specialist, who told her quite plainly, we don't have a treatment. So here's somebody, the approved treatment. I mean, the doctors are willing to try drugs on you that they know aren't going to work, but there's no solution for her. She's completely disabled. She's suffering, because the problem is you become mentally depressed when you're suffering. And it's not just that you're fatigued. This is when you're not sleeping, you're getting run down, you're catching everything, you're depressed, you're anxious, so her world's collapsing and she's going towards death. And that's what happens. So this is life and death. She comes across a natural remedy, which she'll share about in her testimony. And within 24 hours, she's sleeping the night. This is 2 decades ago. Never looked back. It's life and death. It's life and death. And we're getting story after story after story. Another one that comes to mind, I'm interviewing this fellow, and his crisis, he's around 32, and he's an elite athlete. I mean, college level football. He's invited to, the national powerlifting team. He's like a power lifter. He, runs all of this, and he has a back injury flare up. 32, got a couple of young kids, sole breadwinner for the family. And he literally becomes disabled. Like, he describes, it would be about a 15-minute ritual to get out of bed, where he kind of has to inch his legs along the wall, and there's this whole rigmarole just to get out of bed. He's becoming numb from the waist down. And in fact, one of his legs, remember, powerlifter, one of his legs is shrinking.
Ooh.
It's atrophying. So he's got, one big leg, big powerlifter dude. The other leg is shrinking, and there's nothing he can do about it. He's becoming numb. There's no way he can run. He can hardly walk. Getting into a vehicle to drive, and his work depended on him being able to drive, is excruciating. The medical system is basically giving him no hope. So saying, well, we can give you surgery. He's looking into it, and he's talking to people that have the surgery. Like, it really, he can't find anyone that found relief, and most people, they're worse off. And even with the surgery, they're saying you're likely, for sure, you'll never run again. You may lose the ability to walk. And we're really confident you're going to become incontinent, so where you have no bladder control, and you're going to have to wear a diaper, right? He's 32. He's an elite athlete. Boy, he's getting depressed. He's seen no way out. And then he comes across a natural remedy that restores him fully to health. He's lifting, he's running, he's like, and Payman, these stories are affecting me as I hear them, because the people that know the stories, so the practitioners and the manufacturers, they're the ones that know about this. They're the ones that know about the research that they base their products on. They're the ones that know about the research on their products. It's illegal for them to share it, because Health Canada takes the position you can't use a treat. It doesn't. Their complaint, Health Canada's complaint, is never whether it works or doesn't work. You can't share it. You can't say that it's for something unless you go through this billion-dollar process to get approved. And then you still can't talk about it. You can just say it's approved for this purpose. Now we can't get anything without a patent approved for specific treatment. But even then, there's censorship, and there's censorship payment to protect the mainstream medical system, which is based on these patented drugs. And here's how this works. And I want your audience to view this, because this is our reality. This is the fraud that we live in. So let me use antidepressants as an example, because then I can contrast it with the True Hope situation. So I'm in this court case, this federal court case with Health Canada. It's one of these brutal fights involving the Department of Justice, where, your client is, has me, and you can hardly afford that. And there's this team of Department of Justice lawyers with unlimited budget. And we lost that case. And this expert I'm talking about, I think, charged Health Canada. I think it was, I may be totally off on the figure, but it was outrageous. I want to say $250,000. But it might have only been like, 70,000 or 100,000 or something. Like it's been so long ago, but it was just a nosebleed amount of money that this expert charged Health Canada. And then the Department of Justice wanted my client to pay for that. Right? Which, didn't happen because the court said, well, you couldn't rely on this fellow. And so we did, we didn't have to pay that. But he's a psychiatrist who runs a company that gets psychiatric drugs through this billion-dollar process, this patented drug process. And I'm cross-examining this person for days. And at one point, and there's court transcripts of this, at one point, this person starts complaining to me about how hard it is to get new antidepressants through this drug approval process. And it's hard because, well, you got to give Health Canada 2 sizable double-blind clinical trials showing the drug works, which means that there's this statistical separation between the sugar pill in the drug, and we pretend that means the drug works, even though the whole trial is designed to try and get the statistical separation without too many danger signals. So it'll be a very short-term study in an antidepressant. You can't have people on it too long, or the danger signals start to go, and the efficacy signals will go sideways. So they'll actually want to do this during the placebo window, right? Because the placebo is only going to last 2 or 3 months at the most. So almost all of these trials, even though they're double-blinded, we're told that's the gold standard, because that study design is less likely to emphasize benefits of a drug. It's less likely to emphasize the placebo effect. But the reality is there's researchers that actually look at different trial designs, and the evidence doesn't really show that. But what these sizable double-blind clinical trials do, and I'm not saying they're not valuable, but they're given to us as the gold standard. Well, payment, because they're so expensive that if you don't have a patent so that you're confident you could recover your cost with a monopoly if you get through the process, you can't afford them. Like, it's part of how we make this process so expensive that only patented drugs go through them. But in any event, you've got to provide Health Canada with 2 sizable double-blind clinical trials showing there's statistical separation between the sugar pill and the drug, which we pretend means the drug works. And he's complaining, well, to get these 2 right out of the gate, I run 8. Like, so this is a guy that this is what he does for a living. So if you're Pfizer, you go to him and say, get our drug approved. Well, he's going to run 8 double-blind clinical trials at the same time. You can see why this process is so expensive. He's going to run 8 because he's learned over time, I have to run an average of 8 to get 2 that I can give to Health Canada. Now, the other 6 that he doesn't give to Health Canada, and that it's illegal to share with you, the public. The other 6, well, they could show the sugar pill works more than the drug. They could be inconclusive, They could show the drug works better than the sugar pill, but they don't like the safety signals. So they're not going to give those to Health Canada. They could show other things. But they don't have to give those to Health Canada. They just have to provide 2. Now, Health Canada should know about those because you have to get pre-approval, and we don't know in any given case. Do they kind of fudge it so they're saying, well, we're going to run a trial or trials with this study design, and they just get a blanket approval? But if Health Canada doesn't know, but they should know, they could ask, well, how many trials did you run, and provide all the data. But Health Canada is dependent on getting these drugs approved. The fee to Health Canada alone to assess a new antidepressant is $250,000.
It seems like
Okay, like
it's a system of regulatory capture. They're driving up the costs to make the barrier to entry so high to favor this oligarchy that is Health Canada. Like you could think of the oligarchs and the Health Canada as the same thing.
no question. And I'm talking about censorship here and how this protects the chemical drug industry. So here you've got these 6 double-blind clinical trials. Now, if I'm a parent and the doctor wants to put my child on that antidepressant where there was 8 double-blind clinical trials and 2 were given to Health Canada, I actually want to know that there were 8. I want to see the 2 that they gave to Health Canada. I want to know there were 8. I want to see all of them, and I want to see the safety data because people complain to the pharmaceutical companies and they file reports that the government may or may not see. It depends on whether they ask for them. I want to know all the data. And the law should be, these are health decisions. The law should be that whether it's a chemical drug or natural, that you have to provide all the data, the good, the bad, and the ugly, so that parents and people for themselves can make educated health decisions. But that data, it's illegal for the companies to share that with us. It's illegal for them to share anything but this is approved for this is an antidepressant. Now, do you see how that protects the chemical drug industry? Because what parent or what person is going to accept a prescription for an antidepressant and it's only approved for use for a short period of time because they'll only run the clinical trial for a short period of time. If they run it for a long period of time, the drug's never going to get approved. But the joke is on you because the doctor's going to prescribe it to you and say, well, it's actually not really going to start working for you for several months. And there's no clinical trial data going that long. Oh, well, that's interesting, isn't it? So the censorship protects the chemical drug industry. Like likely no one would take a chemical drug if the law was that you had to disclose all of the health information. But this censorship hurts the natural health community big time. And I'll share how, and then just get to this is the point of this health show, is to break the censorship. So let's take True Hope as an example. So True Hope is a company that they have a drug called Power Plus. Now, I'll call it a drug, but it's just a vitamin and mineral supplement. And you can go to your health food store and buy it as a vitamin mineral supplement. And it's approved for something like supports mental health and well-being. They can't tell you that it's the best treatment in the world for bipolar disorder. They can't tell you it's the best treatment in the world for major depressive disorder. They can't tell you that, anxiety, ADHD, like my word, you want to be taking it, like full stop. Payman, they have never paid a cent for any research. But governments have. I live in Alberta. The Alberta government stumped up a huge whack of cash to pay the Behavioral Research Unit, which is a branch of the Faculty of Medicine at the University of Calgary, to run a double-blind clinical trial out of Children's Hospital in Calgary. Because the Alberta government looked at the data and said, oh, the public better fund a double-blind clinical trial. And governments around the world have funded research that has resulted in over 30 published peer-reviewed research articles on this supplement. And, some of them in the blue chip journals like Psychiatry and Journal of Child and Adolescent Psychopharmacology, for example. It's illegal for True Hope or any practitioner to share that research with you. Government-funded research. Isn't that interesting? Now, if I'm a
What's the
parent,
logic behind that? Like, why would you, like, from the standpoint of somebody that's working for Health Canada and they actually believe that Health Canada is a a good institution? Are they saying, before we allow people to potentially harm other people with drugs, misleading them to faulty uses, we have to approve it? Is that it?
I don't want to speculate on somebody else's reason. Like Health Canada always tells us in the area of natural health products, we're managing risk. We have to protect Canadians from risk. Now, nobody disagrees with, hey, you can't be fraudulent, right? Like, so the Food and Drug Act forever has had a protection for fraud. Our criminal code has a protection of fraud. Our telecommunications legislation has protection against fraud in advertising. Like, we all agree, hey, don't lie to us. But that's different than sharing all the information you have, the good, the bad, and the ugly, on something that we're going to take to either prevent illness or treat illness. Because how do we make informed health decisions? Let's be truthful so that people can make their own decisions. So we all agree with let's protect against fraud. That's not what we're talking about here. Why this censorship? I mean, my gut feeling is, but I don't know, it's dangerous to speculate, because sometimes you can end up in a bad place with good intentions. And it's possible that Health Canada, like in the chemical drug world, well, I don't know. Would we be better off? I think we'd be better off without Health Canada, because one of the problems is, they're tremendously dangerous, and I think the whole thing is a sham and a fraud. Like if you had to share all health information, no one would take them, and the government knows this. The government knows that we'd lose confidence in the public health system, and actually demand that we're not just given chemical drugs. So why is the federal government taking all this money from the provinces, saying, here's billions of dollars, but you have to spend it on chemical drug healthcare system that you provide for free with only medical doctors, even though medical doctors are terrible at managing chronic illness, and a whole bunch of people are dying and suffering? Like, I'll just share with you, I'm interviewing somebody yesterday. This isn't a life and death story, but the person, so young mom, 2 kids, so already, her energy is taxed, and she gets restless leg syndrome. So she's fine during the day, but at night, when she goes to lay down to go to sleep, she's getting this almost like electrical shocks in both legs, terribly uncomfortable, and they're jerky in that. You can't sleep. And the only way to stop it is by walking around. So she's not getting any sleep. She's spending the night walking around. And now she's exhausted, and she's getting run down, and she's catching every cold or flu because your immune system's compromised. You can't sleep. She's having trouble dealing with, all her family responsibilities. She's not suicidal or anything, but her life's hell. Her life's hell. The medical doctor wants to put her, we don't actually have anything for restless leg syndrome. But, we can try this drug we have for Parkinson's disease. And one of the major side effects of this drug is, kind of tingling and twitching in your muscles. Like, one of the aside from all these other side effects that literally are, fatal, it's like, and so she said, well, why the heck would I take a drug that's going to give me the same symptoms I'm trying to get relief from? And it's not for this anyway. And we all agree, doctor and me, this is terribly dangerous. But the doctor doesn't have anything else to try. And then she goes to a naturopathic doctor, and it's like, yeah, well, you need this type of magnesium, and then today it's gone. And so she's so transformed by this. She takes a 4-year Bachelor of Science in Florida on holistic nutrition. And it's kind of like, well, like, duh. Then she starts working in a health food store. It's like, well, obviously, a large part of the time when you got muscle twitching and stuff like that, you've got a nutritional deficiency, and more likely than not, it's this magnesium. It's a
Shawn,
type of magnesium. So, but what's grabbing me, Payman, is the doctor wouldn't know that. But in the health community, it's like, you got to put gas in your car, you're going to run out of gas. Like it's just like such a no-brainer. So how many people are suffering or taking a Parkinson's drug when they go to a doctor with something that's just magnesium deficiency? You know, like years ago, I had the fortune of seeing Dr. Carolyn Dean, a medical doctor, talking about magnesium. And she's got up on the screen the symptoms of heart disease. And then she puts beside that the symptoms of magnesium deficiency. They were the same. So how many people are going to the hospital being diagnosed with heart disease when they're just deficient in magnesium and other nutrients? And the doctors are not taught about nutrition. So here we've got this controlled food supply that is being more and more controlled. If you just go to the grocery store and you buy food, even if you're buying organic food, you're going to be nutritionally deficient, and especially if you're eating processed foods. And so we've structured our food supply to make us sick, because when we're chronically malnourished, at some point you develop a chronic illness. And then we manage that chronic illness with chemicals which cause their own imbalance in your body because they're synthetic and shouldn't be there. And you're sick for the rest of your life without relief. And
it's a
that's
good
our
business model.
reality. You know, hey, let's just agree to give them money, but leave us alone. Like, I'd take that. I'd take that trade.
I think it would be too transparent. The system. I get what you're saying. If you assume that the people that run the pharmaceuticals are the same that run the food supply, probably is. They're making you sick, and then they want to give you the chemicals that'll make you probably more sick. But it's a cycle. It's a good money making machine.
Yeah, and it's an absolute fraud. So the drug approval process is a fraud. Like, if people really understood, I'm just touching the surface here. I mean, people write books on how the drug approval process is a fraud. Like, look up Angie Marcel, who used to be the editor of the New England Journal of Medicine. And she's written at least one book on this. And I remember reading, a review on her book where she's quoted as saying that so she basically, it explains all the different mechanisms on how these companies structure clinical trials to basically get the result they want. And then she concludes that, basically you can't trust, listen carefully, and you can find this online, it's easy to find. So I think it's a New York book review on her book. Where she basically says that you can't trust most of the published research. And at the time, she's the lead editor of the New England Journal of Medicine, which is like one, if it's not the leading medical journal, it's like one of the blue chips. She says you can't trust most of the published medical literature and the public health guidelines. And she says she came to that conclusion reluctantly and slowly over her 20 years as a journal editor at the New England Journal of Medicine. And she's a medical doctor.
Only took 20 years.
So the whole system is a fraud. And we've got this censorship which maintains the fraud, because the reality is if people understood even a fraction of how much this is a fraud, and a fraction of how there's this whole other world where people are being treated, we're interviewing for the show. So people, you must put in your calendars. We start this on October 4th. We run it for 3 weeks.
Shawn, before you get into that, why don't we play the video that you provided? And it'll give people, it's a 3-minute video. They can watch that, and then you can talk about the dates. All right, here we go.
Hello, my name is Shawn Buckley. I'm with the Natural Health Product Protection Association, and I'm pleased to announce, beginning October 4th, the world's greatest health show. You know, most health shows just feature experts sharing really vital advice that we need to know, and this health show is going to have that, but it's going to have something much different and much bigger. We're inviting ordinary Canadians to share their stories. Many of us are only alive because of natural health products. Many of us would be completely disabled and suffering without them. And our politicians need to know, and other Canadians need to know. So we're inviting you to participate in the world's greatest health show. And at the same time, starting on October 4th, we are marching the Charter of Health Freedom across the country. We've been collecting paper petition signatures for years. We are the third largest paper petition in Canadian history. And to celebrate the world's greatest health show, and to get this petition entered, to encourage politicians to pass the charter to protect us all, we are driving the charter across the country. We're starting in Victoria on the West Coast. A week and a half later, we're starting a tour from the East Coast and Quebec, and the three legs will join in Ottawa on October 25th. So go to NHPPA.org, find out about the world's greatest health show, apply to be a witness. We don't just want ordinary Canadians, we want health food store owners to share their journeys, why they're there, why it's so important to have trained staff, what they do, some of the success stories that they've experienced. We want manufacturers to share their stories. You know, most of us have no idea how committed they are to helping and the challenges that they face in bringing remedies. So visit NHPPA.org and participate in what is going to be the largest event of the year.
I love that little van. Whoever thought of that one was
that was Mr. Doll. So Jason
yeah.
just
I thought so. It looked like his
Jason could work.
Dollhouse Productions. Yeah.
I'm so the guy impresses me, and you know, what an asset. So yeah, so we were talking about the censorship, and I was saying, listen, you got to watch this show. So we're starting on October 4th. We're going to run for 3 weeks. We don't know how many days we're going to run. It depends on how much content. We're shooting for 4, but at least 3 days a week and a couple of days in French. And so, you know, subscribe to the NHPPA, our newsletter, follow us on social media, and get this out. It'll change lives. You know, I've been interviewing some natural health practitioners. So, you know, naturopathic doctors, traditional Chinese practitioners, homeopathic doctors. And now I've learned to ask them, what percentage of the people coming to you for the first time? So we're not talking, you know, you've got a patient and the patient keeps coming back to you for other things. But when the patient first comes to you with an issue, what percentage have, you know, totally exhausted the mainstream medical system on their medical issue before they come to you? It's like 95%, 95%, 95%. It's almost like a constant. I know the answer now before I ask the question. It's going to be 95% or practically everyone. So, and then I have them share some of their success stories. Although, you know, Payman, I asked the question differently first. I asked, well, what is the, you know, what's the person that came to you that's impacted you the most? Because that could be a failure too. It doesn't have to, you know, the person that impacts us the most isn't necessarily a success story, but they do share their success stories with us. And like literally, it's kind of like ones I've shared where lives are absolutely turned around. So people accessing them have totally exhausted the mainstream medical system. And, you know, then and only then, well, many people don't know. Like many people don't know they're suffering from chronic illness and they have no idea that there's answers. Right. And everyone's answer may be different, but one of the, there's two important parts of the show. And it's why I'm asking your audience, like, follow it, and get people watching it. So first of all, there's going to be nothing objectionable about it. Like, this is just a good news thing. This isn't a COVID event. We're not going anywhere near vaccines, because we want the people, regardless of where they are in that narrative, to be watching this. You're going to lose confidence in Health Canada as a regulator, and that's going to help those that are in that cognitive disconnect right now on the other issue, on the COVID issue. Like, they might be harmed, or somebody they know might be harmed, but they can't make the connection that maybe their trust was misplaced. So by participating in the show, well, you're going to find out that there's this entirely different world, and you're going to find out that information is being suppressed, and you're going to lose you're going to be challenged. Your confidence in the regulatory body is going to be challenged, because it should. But anyone can watch this. Like, how is this going to offend anyone? So you're going to have compelling stories that are going to break your heart, but they're positive endings, right? And you're going to hear about healing traditions that are going to surprise you. And so we need to break this narrative, because Health Canada just says, oh, risk, risk, risk. Let's get rid of these. We need to protect Canadians. But if you actually want good health outcomes, you can't ignore the benefits. Okay, let's look at the benefits. Let's look at the risks, and understanding both. Then how do we get the best health outcomes? And that's not by getting rid of these products. It's by managing the risk that is there, which is minimal, and also promoting the benefits. Like, the irony is, Payman, is if we sat down and we just asked, how do we best get the best health outcomes? We've got chemical drugs, we've got natural health products, we've got medical doctors, we've got natural health practitioners. Likely we would get the best health outcomes by not allowing anyone with a chronic illness to access a chemical pharmaceutical drugs unless and until they've exhausted all reasonable natural treatments. That we would have way, way better health outcomes and a much less expensive health system. But we can't even have that conversation, because the truth has been suppressed. So let's get the truth out. Let's change the narrative. But also, for people who feel locked into this system, that are suffering and they feel like they have no hope, let's get them to understand. Keep looking, because you will find a solution. You're not supposed to be suffering, and you're not supposed to be feeling hopeless. That's not why you're here. So
Shawn, I have a question but first, Rogue Spear says he filled out the petition. He's going to post it to the X account. So thank you very much, Rogue.
right now, the petition, though, so you can get the petition. Clever, in an act of cleverness, I think we've made it hard to find on the NHPPA site, which we'll rectify. But if you go to the Charter of Health Freedom site, there's a petition tab, and the petition is in French, English, and Mandarin. So so off the NHPPA site, just go to the Charter of Health Freedom site, and should be a petition tab. Yeah, and so there, it's English, French. It's also in Mandarin, and but the petition is there also. So the petition, you have to print it off, because it's a paper petition. We want at least 3 signatures on a page, and then mail it to the address at the bottom. So I know that's more onerous, but that's when we started. There was no possibility for a paper petition. Yeah, and we want to blow that up. Like, we're going to be way more than 150,000 when we're done. And even when we've handed them to the MP, you can, we keep sending them to us. Like, we can just have more entered later on. So we're really excited about this, and excited to be the 3rd largest in history. So
Shawn, I have just a final question, just to go over this. I hadn't seen this when I was preparing for this interview. So October 4th, you're going to be in Victoria, 6th in Kamloops, 8th is Calgary.
That's changed. We just haven't updated it. So we're going to be October 6th in Vancouver, and then I think we're October 7th. Like, then we're in Kamloops a little later. We're not going to Calgary now. We're going to go to Grand Prairie. So so come back in a couple of days, and we'll have that ironed out. So, and all that's happened is we sat down and we thought, okay, what does this look like, and where do we think we want to land? But we're dependent on volunteers on the ground, and in some places they haven't really materialized, and in others they have. And so we thought, okay, well, we'll just, we'll go where the action is. So
So, for the audience, like, are you going to actually have a Volkswagen van, and it's going to be in a field, and that's where everyone's going to meet, and you're going to hold
well, no.
interviews? Or?
So tell you what, if somebody has an old Volkswagen van, so two things. First of all, if you have a Volkswagen van that you're willing to lend us, because we don't have the funds to buy one, and it's kind of funny because now they're like, trendy, so they're not cheap. So two conditions: A, you got to have one you're going to lend us, and B, it's got to be mechanically sound enough to make it, across Canada, because we all know that they weren't the most reliable.
What about if somebody donated a $300,000 Airstream?
Oh, hey, if somebody had a motorhome or something, my word, that would make that they were willing to let us use, maybe even drive it for us. We would be very grateful about that. We haven't made any travel arrangements, and it's, we know it's going to be a bit of a long haul. So we would welcome anyone that would be willing to help that way. So
We have an extremely angry audience member, very upset with the NHPPA. Sue Kellen Dyer is from out in Newfoundland. And, she's asking if you're going to be skipping
oh, well,
Newfoundland.
that's, you have the right to be angry there. So, but Sue, tell you what, if you want to, contact the NHPPA and say, I want to hold an event in Newfoundland, then we'll see if we can arrange to have, for you put on an event in Newfoundland that we will live stream and participate. So we're not trying to leave anyone out. I just hope you appreciate, like, we're a small little group and we rely on volunteers. And when we just sat down, we thought, well, we got to have somebody driving from the West Coast. And we thought we picked Charlottetown actually because somebody helping us said, oh, I'm pretty sure I can get a group together in Charlottetown, which actually fell through. We've had to find another group independently. So we would love to have an event in Newfoundland, and it's my wife Teresa, who's a volunteer, that's working on that. So if you send an email to info@nhppa.org and say, put in the subject line, send a Teresa event in Newfoundland, it'll get to us. And yeah, so, but again, we'd have to rely on you, to get a venue. We'd sort out some speakers, and then we'd figure out how we're going to live stream you and fit you in. But we don't want to exclude you, and because you're a little more east than Charlottetown, we could, perhaps, figure out to time you before or whatever. But no, we don't want to exclude anyone. And the interesting thing about this is, like, if we're not going to be anywhere near you, like we want, as this is going, we're going to, set it up so that people can do their own videos and submit them to us, about what they think of the tour and the charter and their message to Ottawa. Like the end thing is what's your message to Ottawa? So we're asking everyone we interview, well, what's your message to Ottawa? And please don't use any bad words. No,
That's
we
going to be a
don't know
tough
what they're
one.
going to
Yeah.
say. I'm just kidding about that. But we want people to be able to participate, and then we'll just stitch those videos in to the broadcast as we're going throughout the day, right? So, like, we want it to be so that people can participate, and, by sending in their own videos, and and having them stitch them into the health show.
Shawn,
So
do you know off the top of your head where they would send that in? Is there an email address? I can put it up.
that detail hasn't been figured out, Payman, and
Oh,
I appreciate that we're, this is going to start on October 4th. So we're a month out. But we're going as quickly as we can. So we will get there. It will happen. And so by the time, the tour starts, you will know, but I can't tell you right now because we're just not there yet. So
can they tentatively go to like info@nhppa.org?
yeah, like if you subscribe to our newsletter and also follow us on social media, and then, you will get the message that, hey, we want this to happen, but we're not going to tell you to do this and participate that way until we've got, the mechanism for you to interact with us set up. So that will happen. So you just have to be connected, because we think that actually could be the funnest part of the tour. And if we get enough people sending videos in, we'll just bump some of the taped speakers to get that in there, and we can just extend the day type thing. So yeah, so we want that to happen, because we want this to be, truly a grassroots thing, and it has to be anyway, because again, we're just like a small handful, and it's people volunteering their time. We've got some people volunteering to interview. I don't want it to be just me. The people are volunteering their time to interview and stuff like that. Like, I was interviewing an expert yesterday. We had tried, we had done a video with her, but her internet sucked and the quality was poor. So like, she was in Ontario. Like, I think she drove like 2.5, 3 hours to a friend that had a studio, so that we could so I mean, like, round trip, she's like 5, 6 hours. And then, I had her for like 2.5 hours. We did 2 videos, but it's on EMF radiation and dirty electricity. And especially, like, if you're a parent, it's going to blow your mind. It's going to blow your mind. But we need a good quality. Well, she's volunteering to do this. Like, it's just the willingness of people to help is just outstanding. And then obviously, like, please donate right now if you can at all afford. We're cringing at how expensive this is. We have to get venues, and we have to pay we have an AV team. I've learned with the NCI, you got to have a professional AV team, and the team we have is just charging us a fraction of what anyone else would charge, and we trust them. But we still have those costs. We got venue costs. We're going to have travel costs, and yeah, so we're hoping to make this work, and certainly appreciate any support, especially early on, that we can get. So,
Shawn, as you were explaining sort of the tour, it seems like you're doing a decentralized sort of grassroots version of the NCI. Instead of bringing everybody to one room, you're saying, you give me your testimony, it has to be only on health, and then you send it to us, and you're gonna be the distributor of that personalized story.
yeah, I mean, but the National Citizens Inquiry, like, when I was there, it was an independent inquiry, so it kind of acted like a court, and it didn't have the answer yet, right? So the commissioners had to sign a letter of agreement, saying that, A, they would be impartial, and B, they would only rely on the evidence put before them, and then, come up with recommendations. But here we already have the solution. So it's the charter, but in a way, it's similar, right? We're not taking evidence under oath. So it's less formal, but it's as compelling. I mean, what was beautiful about the NCI payment, and I think you'll agree, is there was just something about hearing people tell their stories. And I was surprised with what came out, and and I was impacted. And I mean, and it was a challenging experience, because there was a lot of pain there. Um, and that's what was so valuable, is people being able to share. And I think being able to share when we were in a climate of fear. Like, if we called the same witnesses today, when we're not afraid anymore, it wouldn't be the same testimony. So the NCI is a different kettle of fish, and but not in the sense that this is. I'm surprised that what the stories we're getting are as compelling, even though they by and large have happy endings, right? So it's yeah, it's going to be pretty neat.
So one final comment I'll bring up. Sue Kellen Dyer asks, do you have a contact in Newfoundland? Yes, he does. Her name is Sue Kellen Dyer. You've
Yeah,
just
that's right.
volunteered.
Yeah, Sue's our Newfoundland rep. So you know, and let me assure you, you'll find her quite agreeable. That it's almost like, you're the same person. So yeah, so Sue, make sure. I'm gonna take down your name. Sue, do you want to put your email address up?
I can put you in
Okay,
contact
so
with her. But
Damon will give me your email address, and I'll contact you.
I
But
was
I'm
gonna
gonna write down your name right now, though.
If you want, Sue, we can take your personal phone number. We can put it up on the screen, and all the questions for Newfoundland, we'll just forward them to you. No, we won't do that to her.
Right. So no, I'm excited about that. Like I say, we want people to participate, and and we definitely want, like, it's going to be like the NCI. We're a small group, so we depend on people pushing it out, and we depend on people pushing it out as it happens. And likely, like if anyone, wants to just volunteer their time and clip and stuff like that, that probably wouldn't hurt our feelings either. So, because the amount of content's just going to be crazy, and it's going to be engaging. So,
Well, you're doing
and
great work as always.
and again, like, I mean, this this is this isn't about COVID, and it's not about vaccination, but in a way, we think it will be more of a service than, like, so let's say, I was still with the NCI. I'm not, but let's say I was, and we did another hearing on COVID. Well, the Freedom people are going to watch, but those people that we need to encourage on their journey of understanding what happened, they're not going to watch it. But they may be perfectly willing to watch a health show that has nothing to do with COVID, that just has to do with people telling their stories on every health thing imaginable, and experts saying, are you aware of this and that? And, regulatory people and the like. But at the end of it, you're going to say, I don't trust Health Canada anymore. And that's going to help you in this journey where something's wrong. You know that there's something at the back of your mind saying, I need to make a connection. And if you understand you need to think more critically about Health Canada and the drug approval process, that's going to help you in your journey. And all of us need to understand that. Like, the reality is we have this public trust that is completely misplaced. And if we are going to get to an environment where we actually are focusing on good health outcomes, we have to understand that that's not happening now. And we need to get there. Like, there's nothing more important than protecting our health and protecting the health of our families. Like, there's nothing more important. And getting those people that this isn't on their radar, understanding that this is the only mechanism to do that. So, and let's blow it up. And the timing's going to be perfect. We'll have finished back to school rush. People will be settled into the winter routine. And then bang, we have the world's greatest health show online. Yes, you can come and attend live events, but online, it's going to be easy and it's going to be compelling. So,
Well,
and
Shawn,
I get to give opening statements every day. I love that.
oh, that was your favorite part, be honest, of the NCI.
Oh, absolutely. The opening statements were my favorite part of the NCI.
You're very good at those. I can tell you, Shawn, I'm looking forward to linking up with you when well, I guess you're out here now, but at some point I'll link up with you. Mm-hmm. And to the audience, go to nhppa.org, sign up for their newsletter, donate if you can. Keep an eye on the progress and the developments of when the tour is going to start. And I think this is going to be a really fascinating one. So thank you very much for thinking this up and setting it up, Shawn.
Well, thanks for having me on, Payman. I really respect what you do, and I respect you as a person, and just an honor to be on your show. So thank you.
No, you're welcome back anytime. And a big thank you to the audience as well. Take care, guys.